Not being too nice is not about becoming cold or distant or getting revenge. It's about elevating to a place where you can say, my behavior is not a rejection of you. It's preservation of myself. Hi ladies, welcome back to the Feminine Universe. I am so happy to have you here. By now we know there are several reasons why someone may be too nice. It can be a trauma response or a survival tactic adopted from a childhood or a relationship where being overly agreeable was the easiest or safest way to get by. It can be brought on by low self-esteem or low self-worth that makes you feel the need to overcompensate. Or it may just be in your nature to help and give, and it gets taken advantage of. Whatever the reason, the effects are very similar. The solutions are very similar as well. Like I said in part 1, we don't like to just sit around and whine about problems. We like to find solutions here. We covered the downsides to being too nice in part 1, so today in part 2, we are discussing ways to avoid crossing into too nice territory, how to walk the line of still being a nice person without becoming a doormat, as well as behaviors to adopt if you're already in the too nice category, so we can get you out of there ASAP. So without further ado, let's get started. My first recommendation is to be strategic. You ladies know by now that we are big on strategy around here, and how I always describe strategy is getting what you want or the best possible outcome while creating as little friction, pushback, or drama for yourself as possible. You don't want to solve one problem only to create another if you can avoid it. So as you practice not being too nice or start to recover from that lifestyle, realize this doesn't need to be a declaration of war. To figure out how you want to approach this or the best strategy for you, think about whether you created or participated in creating this dynamic. Were you okay with certain things, maybe before you started evolving, that you're no longer okay with now? Are these relationships you want to keep? Are these people willing to change at all? How often do you see and interact with these people? What is the dynamic? Because the dynamic with a guy you met a few weeks ago is different than a boss-employee dynamic or a family dynamic. Considering things like this can allow you to choose the best approach for you and your situation. There are things worth having a conversation about. There are times where you might just start making small changes without a long conversation and spiel and just see what kind of response you get. And yes, there are times where the contact needs to be cut completely, but I've found that in most instances you can remain pleasant or at least civil without any major conflict and without being a doormat. The next piece of advice is that it's okay to be gradual. When you've been a certain way for a long time, or when you've had certain dynamics with people for a long time, it can be hard for you to change your ways or hard for others to adapt to that change overnight. As we know, most humans are resistant to change. I want you to know that you don't have to do it all overnight. It can happen a little bit at a time. If every week your friends engage in activities and routines that you feel like you're starting to outgrow, you don't have to completely disappear or blow them off. You can try suggesting new things and seeing how they respond. You can hang out with them every other week, then drop to every third week and on depending on what you're comfortable with. Both going cold turkey and doing it gradually a little at a time are equally valid paths. Again, it's about choosing the path and strategy that works best for you and yields the results you want in that situation. I want to keep you in my life but also see some changes is going to look different than I never want to talk to you again. Next, you want to focus less on being nice and more on being kind. In our first feminine strategy video, the first strategy I suggested is to be kind. Not nice, but kind. If you haven't seen that video or it's been a while, I'd suggest watching it after this one as they can work hand in hand. I'll put up the definition of nice and kind side by side on the screen so we can really get a feel for the difference. While some sources kind of describe them the same way, if you look closely enough, you can find the difference. Ultimately, I've gathered that niceness is more about doing what people want or what makes others happy, while being kind is more about being a good person. It's more of a do no harm philosophy. It's about being able to say, I don't intentionally harm or cause anyone pain, but I also don't jump whenever anyone hollers. And I do kind and helpful things as I can. Next is to get comfortable putting yourself first. Now, I'm not saying to only think of yourself. In this context, I'm telling you, instead of always putting your needs on the back burner, do what you need to do for you before extending yourself to other people. Like they tell you on an airplane, you have to put on your oxygen mask and life vest before helping the person next to you. Make sure your bills and expenses are taken care of before you give and lend. Make sure you're ready for the event and like how you look before helping others with their pin curls and press-ons, because you might think you're going to get help back, but they're long gone and taking pictures for the gram. When you put yourself first, you're not depending on the help or reciprocation of others. If you get it, great. But even if someone ends up being a disappointment, at least you already did what you needed to do for you. And you're not out here looking and feeling all helpless and hopeless because someone didn't reciprocate. The next point is to work on yourself. So as you put yourself first, be willing to work on yourself as well. Like we said, there are several reasons that people are overly nice. One of the major reasons that many people feel the need to be overly nice is because they're overcompensating for something else. In the context of romantic relationships especially, many women and men feel like their partner is out of their league somehow, and so they need to do more to quote unquote keep them. I can't tell you how many people I've heard say because they are heavier and don't feel like they have as many options, they have to do the most to keep the one they have. Or that because the person they're with is so much more successful, interesting, or popular than them, they feel the need to overcompensate to keep them because that person could have anyone they wanted. Well, baby, it's time to put yourself in the driver's seat of your life where you could have anyone you wanted to. Be the person that people want to be picked by instead of the one hoping and praying to be picked. Do what you need to do and work on what you need to work on, from your mindset to your physical appearance to your social skills, so you won't feel the need to overcompensate in the form of supplication and peasantry. When you work on yourself and become the best version of yourself in every category, you'll know you're a catch as well, and anyone you're with romantically or platonically is as lucky to have you as you are to have them. Next is to set boundaries. When we lack boundaries, we can let certain behaviors slide for quite a while, and because we don't address them, those behaviors become normalized. If you constantly let someone get loud with you, they can start to think you don't mind, or that you've at least accepted it as part of your dynamic. So try addressing things you don't like as soon as they happen. I'm talking the first or maybe the second time if you think it was truly an accident the first time. Boundaries are going to look slightly different for everyone because there are things that I find funny that you may find offensive. But there are basic things that pretty much everyone doesn't like. And I know I owe you ladies a video on the most unlikable traits, but if you also want a video on creating top-notch boundaries and standards for yourself, write boundaries in the comment section so I know to work on that. For now, think about a few things like how loud can someone get with you before you ask them who they're talking to? How many times can someone be late before you call them out on it or decline their request to get together? What kind of jokes will you speak up about and say that you simply don't find funny? Start setting your boundaries. Next is to learn to say no. We hear this a lot, but let's dive a little deeper. As we just mentioned, saying no or stop when people push up against your boundaries is a must. but also just getting comfortable saying no when you simply don't want to do something or don't want to go somewhere is also a necessary practice. Again, this doesn't need to be a super confrontational, super dramatic thing. It can be a simple text in the friend group chat that says, "Doesn't look like I'll be able to make it this week. Count me in for next week." And while I completely agree that no is a full sentence, I will also be honest here and say I am not above making excuses. If people get personally offended if you turn down their food, which is the case in many cultures, but you know you're trying to watch your weight or how you eat or cut back on carbs, an excuse can help. Instead of just no thank you, I'll say I just ate. I may even take a plate to go, because my goal with no is not to make people feel bad, especially if there's no animosity there and they mean well. Not being too nice is not about becoming cold or distant or getting revenge. It's about elevating to a place where you can say, my behavior is not a rejection of you, it's preservation of myself. Because as you mature and really start to understand life, you realize it's not about rejecting anyone. It's all about choosing yourself. Next is to learn to hit the switch. One thing that helps me personally walk the line between nice and too nice is that I know how to hit the switch. I've never had a problem lending a hand at work, but I did have a previous coworker that thought she found a sucker because I was willing to help. So she thought she would just lollygag, then come ask me for help, aka lay the whole project on my lap the day before it's due. And when she did that, I simply said, I actually have an event to be at in 20 minutes. I'm on my way out. Alexander is usually willing to approve deadline extensions for a good reason. You should talk to him or send him an email. Hope everything works out. And I was out the door. That was that, and it never happened again. And we actually did remain perfectly cordial. If someone who never pays you back thinks they're going to come and hit a quick score and come ask you for money again, you can simply say, I just had to deal with a bit of a financial emergency myself, so I don't have any cash to lend right now. Most people will get it together after the whiplash they get the first time you do this. Some people might take 2 or 3 times to get it, but they'll get it. This ability is the reason I'm not afraid of being kind or nice, because once they push it, I have no problem hitting the switch. So if you enjoy helping and it's in your nature, just make sure you're willing and able to hit the switch if someone starts to abuse their privileges or tries taking advantage of you. Then you can keep all that good and giving energy for the people who truly need and deserve it. Next, I will recommend stepping back from what doesn't concern you. There are certain statements you'll hear that will very clearly let you know you've been doing too much. I never asked you to do that is one of those statements. This means you've been inserting yourself and doing for someone who clearly doesn't appreciate it. And you probably had the nerve to ask for some sort of mild reciprocation or help from them. Like if you've been cooking for your roommates because you like to cook, you're good at it, and you like to feed people, but when you suggest that since you cook, maybe they should wash the dishes or load the dishwasher, and they say they never asked you to cook, it's time to step back. It's a simple example, but it happens in so many different arenas of life. Now, I understand this person or these people probably took what you were offering enthusiastically with open arms, but you have to just get okay with taking that statement as the L it is and as a clear sign to just pull back, mind your business, and take care of you. Lastly, I want you to accept and ask for things. This may be harder for some than others, but I'm going to put you on to 2 things, then give you a couple of small ways you can start to do this in your life. The first thing to know is that accepting things from others doesn't just show that you are confident and comfortable receiving, it's actually a sign of respect in a way. As the quote goes, in accepting the gift, you honor the giver. When someone offers you something, they're saying, I see you as worthy of giving to. And your rejection of that thing can come across as, well, I don't see you as someone worthy of taking from or receiving from. The second thing to know is that people may actually like you more when you let them do things for you, not in a needy, annoying way where you're always begging with your hand out, but in moderation. It's called the Benjamin Franklin effect. I'll put it up on the screen to describe exactly what it is, and you'll hear me talk more about this down the line, but just understand for now that letting people, whether it's men, co-workers, friends, family, or new acquaintances, do things for you gives them the room to like you more. As with everything, you don't want to overuse the Ben Franklin effect. You don't want anyone feeling used or annoyed, whether romantically or platonically. If you struggle with asking for or accepting things, start with small things. Like if someone compliments you, fight the urge to deflect and just say thank you with a smile. If you're in someone's home and they say, "Can I get you anything? Water, juice?" you can say, "Water would be great, thank you." If your date takes the check the second it touches the table or excuses himself to pay before the check ever arrives, you just look at him and say, "Thank you for dinner. Everything was lovely." Of course, on this journey not to be overly nice, you have to understand that there will always be special circumstances and exceptions in life, and you'll have to keep that in mind. As we close out this series, I want to make my point very clearly for the people in the front, the back, and on the sides. Being nice is good. Being overly nice is bad. I don't think I can state it any simpler than that. Now go out there and be the best, kindest, healthiest, most balanced version of yourself. Until next time, ladies, stay feminine, stay focused, and have fun.